You're about to sit down for Christmas dinner at your aunt's house in Winnipeg. The table's loaded. Turkey, stuffing, the works. Everything smells amazing. But here's the thing nobody tells you until it's too late. Some of those dishes? They're basically ticking time bombs. And I'm not talking about your uncle's experimental Brussels sprouts recipe. I'm talking about actual food safety disasters that send thousands of Canadians to the hospital every single holiday season. So before you load up that plate, keep watching. Because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which 12 Christmas classics are secretly trying to ruin your holidays. And more importantly, the 2 dishes that are actually safe no matter how badly someone screws them up. Let's start with the obvious one, except it's not obvious at all. Number 12. The frozen turkey trap. Everyone knows you're supposed to thaw your turkey. Duh. But here's what most Canadians get catastrophically wrong. Seems reasonable, right? It's frozen solid. What could go wrong? Everything could go wrong. A 20-pound turkey needs about 5 days to thaw safely in the fridge. 5 days. Not overnight on the counter, not in the garage because it's basically a fridge out there in December. The outside of that bird hits the danger zone long before the inside thaws. And that danger zone, between 4 and 60 degrees Celsius, is where bacteria throw a house party. Salmonella, Campylobacter, all the guests you don't want at Christmas dinner. They multiply fast, really fast. In the right conditions, one bacterium becomes over 1 million in just 7 hours. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency tracks this every year. Turkey-related food poisoning spikes every December like clockwork. And the worst part? You can't tell by looking at it. Can't smell it. Can't taste it. That turkey looks perfect, smells amazing, and boom. You're spending Boxing Day somewhere you really don't want to be. But at least turkey's supposed to be risky. The next one blindsides people every single time. Number 11. Grandma's famous eggnog, raw eggs in a festive drink. What could possibly go wrong? Actually, don't answer that. Traditional eggnog uses raw eggs. And raw eggs can carry salmonella. Now before you say, but I've been drinking grandma's eggnog for 30 years. Good for you. You got lucky. 30 years of Russian roulette with 1 in 20,000 eggs potentially contaminated. The odds seem fine, until you remember that Canadians consume millions of eggs during the holidays. Someone's hitting that unlucky number. Probably multiple someones. And here's the kicker. The alcohol doesn't kill the bacteria. Sorry. I know everyone's convinced that the rum does something magical. It doesn't. Not unless you're aging that eggnog for weeks at specific temperatures, which nobody actually does. They make it the day before. Maybe 2 days if they're really planning ahead. Health Canada's pretty clear on this one. If you're making eggnog, cook it to 71 degrees Celsius first. That's the only way to be sure. But nobody does that because then it's not grandma's famous recipe anymore. It's just warm egg milk with rum. The elderly, kids, pregnant women, anyone with a compromised immune system, they're playing with fire. Or rather, they're playing with raw eggs, which is somehow worse. Number 10. The oyster gamble. Some families do seafood for Christmas. Very fancy, very festive, very likely to send you to the emergency room if you're not careful. Raw oysters are a delicacy. They're also a prime vector for norovirus and Vibrio bacteria. And winter's actually when things get interesting. People think summer's the risky time for shellfish. Nope. Different risks, same danger. Cold water oysters can harbor Vibrio vulnificus. It loves cold water. And it's particularly nasty. It's just violent food poisoning. For people with liver disease or weakened immune systems, it has a 50% fatality rate. 50%. That's not a typo. That's not a dramatic exaggeration for YouTube. That's the actual number from the Canadian Public Health Agency. And you can't see it. Can't smell it. Can't taste it. That oyster looks exactly the same whether it's going to give you a pleasant briny experience or 3 days of regret. The safe move? Cook them. But then you're not really having oysters anymore. You're having hot shellfish, which is a completely different vibe. So people take the risk. And every year some of them lose that bet. Number 9. Stuffing. The silent killer, not the stuffing that's baked separately in a dish. That's usually fine. I'm talking about stuffing that's actually stuffed inside the turkey. Here's the problem. The turkey might hit 74 degrees Celsius on the outside. Perfect. Safe. Delicious. But the stuffing in the middle, still sitting there at a cozy 45 degrees. Right in the danger zone, soaking up raw turkey juices like a bacteria sponge. By the time the stuffing reaches safe temperature, the turkey's overdone. Dry. Disappointing. So people pull it out when the turkey looks right, and the stuffing's still not safe. Food poisoning from contaminated stuffing is so common that professional chefs don't even bother with it anymore. They bake it separately, every time. No exceptions. Because they know the math doesn't work. The turkey cooks from the outside in. The stuffing heats from the outside in. The middle of the stuffing is the last thing to get hot. And if you've packed it tight, which everyone does because you want maximum stuffing, air can't circulate. It takes even longer. Meanwhile, all those lovely juices from the raw turkey, they've dripped down. They've soaked in. They're having a great time. Your digestive system will not. Number 8. The honey-glazed ham situation. Ham seems safe. It's cured. It's already cooked when you buy it usually. What's the risk? The risk is thinking it's already safe when you buy it. Because fully cooked doesn't mean sterile. It means cooked once, at the processing plant. Then it sat around, got shipped, got handled, got stored. Listeria loves deli meats and pre-cooked hams. Loves them. And Listeria's a special kind of nightmare because it grows in the fridge. Most bacteria can't do that. Listeria can. It's patient. It's persistent. And it's particularly dangerous for pregnant women. Canada had a massive listeriosis outbreak in 2008. 22 people died. From deli meat. From stuff that was supposed to be ready to eat. So yeah, that ham needs to hit 74 degrees Celsius all the way through before you glaze it with honey and pretend everything's fine. Not just warm, not just heated through. Actually hot enough to kill anything that might have moved in while it was hanging out in your fridge for 3 days. And that glaze, if you're basting it on repeatedly and it's touching raw surfaces and going back to the bowl, you're cross-contaminating. That bowl of glaze becomes a bacterial swimming pool by the end. Number 7. Caesar salad. Wait, salad? How is salad dangerous? 2 words. Raw. Eggs. Traditional Caesar dressing has raw eggs in it. Sometimes raw anchovies too, depending on the recipe. Both are potential problems. But it's the eggs that get people. Some restaurants use pasteurized eggs. Some use egg substitutes. Your aunt making Caesar salad for Christmas dinner? She's probably using eggs straight from the carton. Raw. Unpasteurized. Potentially contaminated. And here's the fun part. Caesar salad's one of those dishes that sits out at room temperature during the meal. Appetizer course. Main course is taking forever because someone's trying to carve the turkey and not quite managing it. Meanwhile, that salad's been sitting there for 90 minutes. The dressing's warming up. Any bacteria present is having the time of its life. Sure, right up until it gives you salmonella from the raw eggs in the dressing that's been sitting at room temperature for 2 hours. Number 6. Potato salad. Speaking of salad, let's talk about potato salad. Because apparently salads are out to get us this Christmas. Potato salad's a mayonnaise-based dish, and mayonnaise has a terrible reputation for food poisoning. Except here's the twist. The mayonnaise isn't usually the problem. Commercial mayonnaise is acidic enough to be relatively safe. The problem is everything else. The potatoes. The eggs if you add them. Once you mix everything together with mayo, you've created this lovely, moist environment that bacteria love. And then people leave it out. Because it's a cold dish. It's supposed to be served cold, so it sits on the buffet table for 3 hours, while everyone eats and chats and goes back for seconds. Meanwhile, any bacteria present when you made it has been multiplying. Having a party. Inviting friends. Potato salad needs to stay below 4 degrees Celsius until serving, and then it should only be out for a maximum of 2 hours. That's it. 2 hours. Then it goes back in the fridge or it goes in the garbage. Nobody does this. Everyone makes a giant bowl, leaves it out for the entire dinner, puts the leftovers back in the fridge at midnight, and wonders why everyone's sick on Boxing Day. Number 5. Shrimp. Ring. The classic Canadian party appetizer, a frozen ring of shrimp from Costco. Thaw and serve. Simple, foolproof. Except people don't fully thaw it, or they thaw it on the counter. Or they thaw it, leave it out for 4 hours and serve it anyway because it's been cold. Shrimp's one of those foods that goes bad quickly. Really quickly. Even when it's cooked. Because shrimp has a high surface area to volume ratio. Lots of surface for bacteria to colonize. And once it's thawed, the clock is ticking. Vibrio and Salmonella love shrimp. And Canadians love leaving shrimp rings on the appetizer table for the entire party. 3 hours. 4 hours. Room temperature the whole time. The package says keep refrigerated until serving. Serve immediately after thawing. Nobody reads that. Or they read it and ignore it because everyone does it this way. Everyone does. And every holiday season, thousands of Canadians get food poisoning from shrimp. It's so predictable that public health officials can set their watches by it. Number 4. Tourtière. Now we're getting into the controversial territory. Tourtière is a Quebec Christmas tradition. Meat pie. Sometimes a mix of meats, seasoned with cloves and cinnamon and all sorts of festive spices. The problem isn't the tourtière itself. It's how people reheat it. Or don't reheat it. Some families make tourtière days in advance. Totally fine if you're reheating it properly. Not fine if you're just warming it up until it's lukewarm and calling it good. Ground meat is risky. Way riskier than whole cuts. Because when you grind meat, you take whatever bacteria was on the surface and distribute it throughout the entire product. That's why you need to cook ground beef to 71 degrees Celsius. No pink, no exceptions. But tourtière is often served as a cold dish or barely warm. Especially leftovers. People pull it out of the fridge, eat a slice, and move on with their lives. If that pie wasn't cooked to proper temperature in the first place, or if it's been sitting at room temperature for too long, or if it wasn't stored properly, congratulations, you've got a bacteria delivery system wrapped in pastry. And the spices. They don't kill bacteria. Nothing about cloves or cinnamon is antibacterial enough to matter. That's a myth. A delicious, festive myth that sends people to the hospital. Number 3. Mulled wine, hot wine. Spices. Sugar. Served warm. Seems safe. It's not the wine that's the problem. Orange slices. Cinnamon sticks. Star anise. All lovely. All potentially contaminated. But the real issue is temperature. Mulled wine is supposed to be served hot. But hot is subjective. Some people serve it at 60 degrees. Some at 70. Some let it cool down to lukewarm and serve it anyway because it's still warm enough. If you're adding raw fruit to that wine, and it never gets hot enough to actually sanitize anything, you're potentially creating problems. Especially if that mulled wine sits in a slow cooker for 6 hours while people serve themselves. Slow cookers don't always heat evenly. The bottom's hot, the top's warm, the middle's somewhere in between. Perfect conditions for bacteria that survive the initial heating. And then there's the ladle. Everyone uses the same ladle. All night. Dipping back into the pot. Cross-contaminating. Nobody's washing their hands between servings. Food poisoning from mulled wine is rare. But it happens. Usually from the fruit. Sometimes from contaminated spices that never got hot enough to be sterilized. Number 2. Butter tarts. With raw filling. Some butter tarts have a runny filling. That's the style. That's what makes them special. But that runny filling? It's eggs and sugar and butter that never fully cooked. By design. That's the point. The filling stays liquid. Now, if you're using pasteurized eggs, fine. Probably safe. If you're using eggs straight from the carton, you're gambling. Most butter tart recipes don't cook the filling to safe temperature. They cook it until it sets up just enough to be gooey. That's usually around 60 degrees. Maybe 65. Not high enough to kill salmonella. Not even close. Commercial bakeries use pasteurized egg products. Home cooks don't. They crack eggs right into the mixture and hope for the best. And butter tarts sit out at room temperature. For days sometimes. In tins on the counter, getting passed around. Everyone taking one. Nobody refrigerating them because they're fine. They're baked goods. Except they're not fine. They're potentially contaminated with bacteria that's been growing slowly but steadily at room temperature. Number 1. Christmas pudding with brandy butter. Here it is. The absolute worst offender. Christmas pudding. This dense, fruit-filled cake gets made weeks in advance. Sometimes months. And then it sits at room temperature. Wrapped in cloth. Soaked in alcohol periodically. Getting better as it ages. The theory is the alcohol preserves it. The reality is way more complicated. First off, the pudding itself needs to be cooked thoroughly. Many people undercook it. The outside's done. The middle's still raw batter. Then it sits for weeks. And yeah, the alcohol helps. But it doesn't sterilize everything, especially not if the pudding wasn't fully cooked to begin with. And then there's the brandy butter, which is butter and sugar and brandy, mixed together, not cooked, just whipped. That butter? It's been sitting at room temperature. The brandy doesn't preserve it enough to matter, and bacteria love butter. Leave it on the counter in a fancy dish. Serve it with the pudding. Everyone's scooping it out with the same spoon. Cross-contaminating. Getting butter everywhere. Staphylococcus aureus loves this setup. Absolutely loves it. It's a butter-loving bacteria that produces toxins. And those toxins don't get destroyed by reheating. So even if you reheat the pudding, even if you're being careful, if the brandy butter's contaminated, you're in trouble. Food safety experts don't like Christmas pudding made the traditional way. At all. Too many variables. Too much room for error. Too much sitting at room temperature for too long. That's the terrifying list. 12 Christmas dishes that are basically playing Russian roulette with your digestive system. But I promised you 2 dishes that are actually safe, and I meant it. The safe dish number 1. Roasted vegetables. Roasted vegetables are nearly impossible to mess up from a food safety standpoint. You're taking vegetables, coating them in oil, and cooking them at high temperature until they're done. No raw eggs. No undercooked meat. No dairy sitting at room temperature. Just vegetables getting blasted in a 400-degree oven until they're caramelized and delicious. Even if you undercook them slightly, the worst that happens is they're crunchy. Not dangerous. Not contaminated. Just crunchy. And if they sit out at room temperature for a while during dinner, still fine. Vegetables don't harbor the same dangerous bacteria as meat and dairy. They can grow bacteria, sure, but it takes a lot longer. And the risk is way lower. You'd have to really work at it to give someone food poisoning with roasted vegetables. Like leave them out for days. Or contaminate them with raw meat juices. Under normal Christmas dinner conditions, they're safe. The safe dish number 2. Anything from a can that you heat thoroughly. Cranberry sauce from a can, absolutely safe. Canned gravy that you heat to boiling, safe. Green beans from a can that you cook properly, safe. The canning process sterilizes everything. And as long as you heat it thoroughly before serving, and don't let it sit at room temperature for hours afterward, you're golden. People turn their noses up at canned goods. Oh, that's not homemade. That's not traditional. You know what else isn't traditional? Food poisoning. Canned goods have saved more lives than anyone wants to admit. Because they're sterile until you open them, and if you handle them properly after opening, they stay safe. Heat that cranberry sauce until it's bubbling. Keep it hot, or keep it cold. Don't leave it at room temperature. Simple, effective, safe. So there you have it. 12 Christmas dishes that are secretly trying to ruin your holidays.